They pick their boogers just like you do. They go to the bathroom just like you do. I swear to God, it was the funniest thing. And like, she brought me down to this, like, okay, they are humans just like you. And believe you me, like, we forget that a lot.
Yes.
And we face these fears that we forget to remember that we're all humans. We all make mistakes, right?
The raw truth.
I came in the Mariel boat lift. We arrived here on May of 1980 and left to my dad's sister's house, half-sister. And there's a story in between, but before you know it, we ended up living in someone else's house. My parents being immigrants, my mom became per se the maid of the house, and my dad started working with the construction company of the gentleman that owned the house. After a couple years, ended up moving to our own home, which was a duplex in Sweetwater. I remember it. And then from there, we moved to the trailer park. And that's where I grew up most of my teenager years until I left home. So my mom became a single mom in the whole transaction of moving places to places. So I was raised pretty much by a single mom that doesn't know how to read or write.
English or any language?
No, she doesn't know. My mom was taken out of school when she was in 3rd grade.
Oh.
So she doesn't know how to read or write. And basically, we kind of helped each other, grow up together, basically. My sister Lisbeth was one of my biggest, role models at that point, because my mom had some type of nervous breakdown. She wasn't mentally 100% there at times, and my sister Lisbeth was the person that I looked up to the most. I started working at the age of 14, and I would go to work with my mom at the hospital, cleaning the 4th floor of Kendall Regional Hospital. And my sister Lisbeth, since she was the older one, she would stay home taking care of my baby sister, which was premature. So she kind of stayed with her, and I left with my mom. I would come home, I want to say 10:30, 10:45 by the time we were done, cleaning. And then obviously to go to school the next day. I don't blame anyone for it. It just made me who I am today. And that's why people see that I am so self-driven, because I've always wanted better for myself. And obviously now I have kids, and I chose to go a route where I can give them a better future at the end of the day. So
what brought you to the real estate industry?
I got my first job as a receptionist in a title company in 1995. I got licensed in real estate in 1997. And from the moment I got hired as a receptionist in a title company in 95, it took me about 8 months to want to upgrade my position. So I ran what is called a post-closing department in a title company. So I kind of learned this business from the back end towards the front, because a title company is where you actually do the closing. It's where everything comes together, and post-closing is actually what happens after the closing, right? So I would send the package back to the investor or the lender. I would be responsible for doing policies after the fact. So when you close a title file, it's 2 months later and you're still dealing with the transaction, because you have to make sure that nothing was recorded from the moment that they bought to the time the policy is issued. So I kind of learned the back end. In that title company, I wanted to learn how to process, which is what happens before post-closing, right? So how do you process title? And I wasn't given the opportunity in that title company, so I kind of left. I was getting, back then I was making, I think was $11 an hour. So I left that company and I went to work for $9.75 an hour, but they were giving me a processing job. So I kind of like downgraded myself, but I needed the experience, and it's the cost of basically life, a college life, right? Yeah. So you kind of like downgrade, you go process, and I learned how to process. I learned what happens from the moment that a title company receives a contract, what needs to be ordered as far as lien letters, survey, title, obviously. I learned how to clear title. I learned how to read a title commitment. And then as I was doing that as a processor in 97, I went on and I sat for my real estate exam. Mind you, I sat for the test 3 times. The first 2 times I missed it by 1 point. And the second time I took that test, I asked the teacher, hey, what's going on? Like, I know the material. Why am I not passing this? And he was like, Iris, you need to take a test taking technique class. And that was the best advice that man ever gave me, because after I did that class, I passed it with a 94. And then after I passed my real estate exam, I wanted more. I wanted to get my title agent license, because I was already, I already knew what was going on. I knew, how to do it. So I went ahead and I sat for my title agent exam, and that exam is very hard. Most people don't pass it the first time, and I think because I took that test taking technique class, I ended up getting like a 94 on the state exam. So I got my title agent license. I didn't sit in a closing table with other people to actually handle the closing. And I remember I left that job to another title company because I wanted to close. I don't remember leaving for less money at that point because I had the experience. So I ended up leaving. I remember this attorney, that she was the attorney for the title company. She says, it was my first closing. And she goes, okay, you're going to do this closing. I was like, no, I'm not going to do the closing. She goes, there's 2 attorneys. There's a buyer's attorney. There's a seller's attorney. And she literally just tells me, Iris, come here. Come into my office. So I go into her office and she goes, you see those people out there? I said, yeah. And she goes, they pick their boogers just like you do. They go to the bathroom just like you do. I swear to God, it was the funniest thing. And like, she brought me down to this, like, okay, they are humans just like you. And believe you me, like, we forget that a lot.
Yes.
And we face these fears that we forget to remember that we're all humans. We all make mistakes, right? So I'm sitting there inside that closing, and when I heard the attorney, because there was a buyer's attorney, so basically she told me, go in the conference room and just say, this is the package for your client, and hand it to him and let him carry the closing. Let him explain the documents to his client. And mind you, I had already sat in closings with this attorney doing it, so I kind of had a reference point of what should happen. So I remember sitting there giving him the package and him going through the package, and I was like, oh my God, is this man really an attorney? Like, wow. How he explained those documents to the client, I mean, I was like appalled. When he got to the truth in lending form, I was like, I can't believe he just said that. And I'm not going to say what he said, but I knew it wasn't the right way to explain it, right? He concluded the closing. I, thank God, didn't have to do it, but I got to experience someone else doing a closing, so that I had 2 point of references to do closings. After that, I mean, I just took on all the closings of the office. I loved it because I didn't have to do the post-closing part of it, which was a lot. I didn't have to do the processing, so all I would do was closings all day long. During this time, I was doing that, full time, and I was doing real estate part time. I wanted to know everything there had to do with real estate. I was driven right into real estate from the moment that I started working in, and I loved it. So I went on to doing the mortgage side of it, and I passed the exam, and I started working for a company, and I started my clientele by the people that I got through the real estate part of it, right? So back then it wasn't as easy as today. There wasn't social media and whatnot. So what I did was I grabbed an 8x11 paper, and I just put a big stop sign, right? And it said stop renting, and then on the side it said, why rent when you can own with $3,000 back then? So I jumped a whole mess of communities that were security gated. I got kicked out and put in a golf cart many times. But, I was able to grab a couple of clients and transition them into doing the mortgage. And I was able to provide such valuable information to those initial clients that my clientele today derives from all of them, because I don't advertise. I don't visit real estate offices. all my families and friends obviously have done the mortgages with me. I've been able to service them in selling their homes. And it's just goes to show me that if you provide the right service and the care to clients, they're going to continue with you. And that's the database of clients that I have today. I mean, I don't advertise. Yeah. And like I said, I don't visit real estate offices. This is how I started, from nothing.
Yeah. There's it's pretty interesting that you try basically every little piece of the industry, but you sound very passionate about closing.
I think I love the title part of it because I got to see a lot of emotions going on in a closing table.
That's true.
I was able to see people's reaction and happiness and frustrations. Like, I got to see it all in the closing table. And if you know me, I love to help. I love to see people happy. So that's what drove me into wanting to learn more and wanting to service more and wanting to care more about people.
What are some of the things that you can share that you've seen in the closing table that you're like, wow, this is really why I'm here?
I saw a lot of inconsistencies, and that's why I decided to get all three, right? Because I was able to see at closings where buyers were surprised that their cash to close was $10,000 more. And being a real estate agent without a license and giving my deals to someone and being their beck and call to inaccuracies, basically, I just felt that I wanted, not that I'm a control freak, but I wanted to make sure that my clients were serviced in a way where that moment was memorable for them.
Can you share a story?
In lending, you make a mistake and it's money, right? So I did make mistakes as far as closing cost mistakes at the beginning. I mean, I can't remember, I can't put my finger on it right now, but I remember at the closing table having to make zero. And those were expensive college classes. When you're counting on a paycheck and you're on commission, those are expensive college classes. I do remember, and not so long ago, I can tell you that I had an experience with one of my listings that it was my listing and the real estate agent brought me an offer, sent me a DU. I'm looking at the DU, but there's a place in the contract where you put if the seller's going to give a seller concession towards the buyer's closing cost. In this particular contract, my fault, they put it in a different spot. So I was looking for it in the last page of the contract. In additional terms, you usually write it there. Seller agrees to pay borrower $10,000 towards closing. And it wasn't there. They put it on the additional addendums part, and then they put closing costs. And they put 2% in that specific area. And then fast forward, we're getting ready to close, and I get a CD, which is a document that shows what the seller's getting. And I see a $7,000 seller contribution. I was like, hey, wait, there's no seller contribution. And the real estate agent says, okay, no, yeah, it's here, 2%. It's right where it says closing costs in the additional, in the addendums part. And I was like, man, I can't believe this. I missed this, like, totally. So I called the title company and said, hey, listen, it's my mistake. Take it off of my commission. I don't get commission on this deal. My seller's not going to pay for something that is my fault. Long story short, I'm going to the walkthrough, and I said, let me call Miami-Dade Board of Realtors. I get on the phone, and I call Miami-Dade Board of Realtors, and I get an attorney, and I tell the attorney, and they're like, oh, man, I really messed this one up. Like, I didn't see these people put this here in the additional addendums part. They didn't put it in the additional terms. Like, what do I do? Like, why did they do this? He goes, well, first of all, it's not where to put it. It's kind of sneaky, but take a look at this. They put 2% where? And then it said additional terms, right? Like in a box. He said 2% of what? And of closing costs, because they put close in where it says closing costs. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, it's there. He goes, okay, how much of the closing cost? The closing costs were like $7,000. Okay, give him 2% of $7,000. So they did something sneaky to me where I, took it upon myself to reach out to the legal team and it was, first of all, it was wrong. It was done intentionally, sneaky.
Yeah.
And I kind of called, the broker at that point, and I said, listen, your agent was taught this way, and it's, it may be the right, but it wasn't specified. And to top it all off, I look at the DU, because I would have caught it at the DU, but there was nothing on the DU either. So I was able to, contribute the $700 versus the $7,000. But it's those things that in this business, you can never think that you know it all.
Yeah.
Or that you're looking at something and assume that it's not there. That taught me a very valuable lesson, and it's to keep my eyes open, because not everyone's ethically correct with you or want to handle business the same way you do. That was one of the scenarios that I can remember that stuck with me, because it was going to cost me.
Yeah, it's definitely complex, and I think that's some advice for newcomers, which we'll talk later about. But that's definitely something to keep in mind. What are the things that you would have changed throughout your life to be a better lender, a better realtor?
You have two types of clients: the ones that want the truth, and the ones that want you to sugarcoat it. I'm not a broker that sugarcoats anything. I tell you, this is what's going to happen. This may happen. So I set expectations up front. So there's clients that I've lost that were not a fit because they want me to sell them something that's not what's going to happen to them at the end, So that's my main struggle, that I'm transparent. I say what it is. Within my experience, I tell them the good, the bad, the ugly, what can happen, what cannot happen, and some people don't want to be lied to at the end of the day. So, not everyone's a fit for everyone, right?
Yeah.
So that's the only struggle that I've had, that some people don't like for me to be truth.
So with that truth, how do you handle it? You have to tell them, look, you don't qualify, or you don't have the money.
I had one case where, so this client came to me and says, hey, Iris, we're buying our first home. In this case, it was calculating royalties. And not everyone knows how to work with income, where you have to calculate artist royalties. So I get the contract, I start the loan, and like 2 weeks into the loan, and he comes and he says, no, because my father-in-law has a Chase private client, and they're going to give him a loan because in better terms or whatnot, supposedly better terms, they've already approved him. I said, listen, you're going to leave from here, and this and this and this and this is going to happen to you, because the ops team that's behind this is in the box type of thing, besides the fact that there's overlays when you go to different banks. We're agency product. We know the guideline. We know how it's supposed to go. Banks have the agency and they put overlays.
Yeah.
So I tell them this and this is going to happen to you. Like 10 days before they're closing, the pregnant wife calls me and says, Iris, we're going to lose $45,000 because everything that you told us happened, So obviously I extended my hand and I got them closed on time. They didn't lose their deposit. But you got that type of client where sometimes it makes me feel bad that I'm here pouring out my heart and telling you everything that's going to happen to you, and you just go. But sometimes you just have to let clients go.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to say, hey, I wish you the best of luck, and I run my business nowadays where if I get a pre-approval from another bank, and if it's better, 100% I'll tell the client, listen, they're offering you something that I can't offer you because they are a bank and because they have a portfolio of investors, giving this product out, and I don't have that as an agency, provider. So I just had one right now, and I told her, listen, they're giving you, this amazing program because it's like I said, a set of investors within a bank that are going to portfolio these loans, and I don't have that. So if during the process, in this case, I'm doing the real estate part of it, if during the process I see that there's something iffy, I can always jump in and help you 100% with this product. But for now, let's stick with this one. They're offering you a better deal.
Yeah, I think that there's at least from my experience, because I did buy a house from you personally, and I think that there's an education component that you give to people, even if they don't buy from you. Of course, I did buy from you because I didn't look elsewhere, and I didn't want to because of that. I think that in this industry, or at least as a client, as a buyer, it's really hard to find people that really care about telling the truth, right? And the truth, sometimes it hurts. When you really have this dream about buying a house or making an investment and you just can't afford it, or maybe there's something in your credit that doesn't fit. But I always felt that you always give some value.
Thank you.
And I think that that's important, to do. So it sets you apart.
Even through a transaction, there are things that happen that are beyond our control.
Yeah. Like what, for instance?
Like what happened to you in your house. Like, how are we supposed? Like, it happened to me in a property, and these things happen, and all I can do is, hey man, I feel really bad that you're going through this, but how would we know that unless you go and break the wall, or unless you do certain things? Unfortunately, these things happen. There's always a way out of it. The only thing that there's not a way out of is death and the IRS. And I always tell clients, it sucks at the end of the day, but it's something that, how would we know? You saw the same thing I saw.
Yeah.
And I'm bringing this up because I'm open and transparent. Yeah. But again, you hire an inspector to go out there, and the inspector is going to look at the same thing you're looking at. The AC, the little plumbing that they can see, and the electrical or whatnot. But as far as construction, we're kind of like blind. Everyone is.
Yeah.
I bought a duplex that I had to let go as a demo because I bought it. I wanted to, I wanted to redo it, rehab it, and rent it while I applied for a 10-unit apartment building. And what happened to me? I get there, I start doing the demo, and I see that the iron inside the concrete they're exploded.
Oh man!
So what are you gonna do at that point?
You bought a lot.
It is what it is. It happens it can happen when you least expect it. So unfortunately, all I can do is try to remedy the issue that we have.
Yeah.
And know that we're human, and that these things do happen. Unfortunately, it's
even if you build your own house and you're there every day, stuff is gonna happen.
1,000%.
There's no way to control that.
I have a client that I just closed last year, and it was a house that was rehabbed, and man, they moved in, and like the second week they're calling me because there's water coming from the second floor into their kitchen. And I was like, oh my God, what do I do now? So I called the seller at that point, which the seller was like, hey, I sold the house as is, it is what it is. And I was like, no, because the shower pan, I think they didn't do it right, and now it's seeping into the kitchen. And these are clients that have bought like 5 or 6 homes from me, and I'm not gonna leave them high and dry. Yeah. So what did Iris do? Iris got and spoke to a leak detector. Iris paid them to find out where the leak is. And mind you, I had already called an adjuster to go to the property. He was already telling us, no, because that's the shower pan, and we gotta take out all the shower area. We have to take it off. And long story short, after he left, I hired the leak detector guy. Actually, I hired 2. And you know what it was? It was just that the fixtures have a plate, right? And that plate wasn't glued on correctly. And thank God that he said, Iris, I have a feeling that 80%, it's that. He went ahead, he glued everything, he sealed everything, and thank God the leak was gone. But that client, to me, he calls me, he doesn't do anything without me. And that wasn't an issue that I was supposed to take care of. And then obviously I took care of fixing the roof on the inside from the kitchen.
Yeah.
It cost me literally about $900, but I have a client for life.
Yeah.
Because as a real estate agent, I didn't leave him high and dry. And it has to be like an extenuating situation where an insurance policy should cover, right?
Yeah.
So it's very important to deal with people that care. The care factor has to be there.
Yeah, it's true. And there's so many people doing this right now that is kind of a needle in a haystack.
Yes.
So, yeah. In the past month or so, we've been visiting some flips. Well, I have. Of yours, and you've been doing flips, for a while now. How do you find time to do a flip, which is not easy, in South Florida?
Wow.
And manage a business and be a mom and be a boss?
So I have a great team behind me. Nancy and whoever's dealt with my office has dealt with Nancy. She handles everything, that I don't practically. We just hired someone else and my daughter. And I work very long hours. Before I go to sleep, all the unanswered messages that are still blue, I sit there and I answer everyone. And I just set an expectation up front with all my clients. And I tell them, listen, I'm on it. If you don't hear from me, it's because I have no news for you. The moment that we need something, we're gonna reach out. And I just set my expectations, whether it's for a listing, whether it's for a buyer, whether it's for a finance. I set the expectation up front. Like, I take my time the day we talk and we go through the whole process. And I think if you set the expectation up front of what can happen and what shouldn't happen, I think it eases the client, to be calling you every single day. Like, they respect that, I rarely receive calls after, I want to say 7 o'clock. And mind you, I do get the occasional ones and I do answer them. But
don't call her at 7, please.
What was that?
Don't call her at 7 p.m.
Yeah. No, you can, they can call me, but if you set the expectation up front for everything in life, if you set the expectation and you set your boundaries, whether it's a relationship, whether it's with your kids, whether you set boundaries and they'll respect you.
What advice would you give yourself if you had to go back to 96, knowing everything that you know, or even if it's somebody that is starting today in 2024?
So if you're going to start in this industry, I think that consistency and the wanting to grow and learn is key. You'll know, there's a saying that says, if you last in real estate 1 year, you're like sucked into it. I was guilty of not being consistent. I wake up every day and like every single opportunity that I get, I like crumble it up, and like in my mind, I have a vision of like I throw it to a Velcro wall, and I wake up and another opportunity and another, like I have this imaginary wall in my brain that I throw all these opportunities on there on a daily basis. Some of them fall, but some of them do stick, and I do that every single day. And back in the day, I would make, let's say, $17,000, and $17,000 in 1997 is a lot of money for a young person, especially. And I sometimes would take like a month and a half or 2 months off, just enjoying my money and enjoying my life. And when I had $2,000 left in the bank account, I wouldn't start again. And mind you, this takes 30 to 45 days from the time you land the contract, to be able to get paid. So don't put yourself in that spot of, wow, I don't have money, like every day. This is an everyday thing. It's an everyday job. It's an everyday education. You can't think you know it all at all times, because things do change and circumstances are different. Everyone's case is different. So definitely to be consistent and vigilant and just take care of all the opportunities that come across you.
I think that's a good segue to a question I had about the industry itself. What are some of the things that you want to see change in the industry, whether it's in South Florida or in general?
I want to see more people coming together, more professionals coming together. I wish everyone had this ethical thing inside of them, that you're not coming across like a shark. Why would you take away business from someone? Like, I do have real estate agents that send me their loans. And the first thing when someone calls me and asks me, hey, I need this, how did you meet me? Or how did you come across, to me? And believe you me, if it came from a real estate agent, I circle them back to that agent, right? But there's people out there that are not like that. If I refer you someone that I cannot deal with, it's yours. I don't expect anything from that. There's so many people out there doing things that they're not supposed to, number one. And number two, that it's not ethical for me. If I give you something, it's because it's for you,
Yeah.
And I just would love to see the professionals coming together instead of, no, I represent the seller, or no, I represent the buyer and I'm going to be a dick to you. No. It's just, a transaction should be very easy and where the parties, have an amicable, decision on to how to close a transaction. Not, no, I represent the seller, I'm going to be difficult,
Oh, wow.
Those agents, I don't deal with them.
How do you feel today after all these years of working hard, living in a trailer? Are you happy with everything that you've done? Is there anything that you would change?
I am extremely happy with where I've gotten to. Just last year, I was able to build this beautiful office, and it all has to do with always wanting to better myself. I think that if I did it, anyone can do it. And if you love real estate and this is what you want to do, and you give it your all, you're gonna make it. I think that all you have to do is pour in your time. I mean, what type of business can you open that if you pour in time alone, it will give you fruits?
Yeah.
So real estate is one of those businesses. I mean, later on you make your first commissions or whatnot, you have to learn how to reinvest in yourself. And that's something that I finally was able to do in the past 4 years, where I've made enough money where I haven't spent it on expensive purses. I haven't spent it on, shoes and perfumes. And even though every once in a while I do splurge a little bit, but I limit myself to those things. But I put it back into my business, put it back into people that are helping me grow this business. And I just wish that everyone had a frame of mind of being consistent and seeing the future, and that they can do it if they really, put it to practice.
Great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Danny.